Hello, my name is Philip Harrelson. I'd like to welcome you back again to the Barnabas Study. And I'm going to be talking about something I feel like is very important for our Christian walk, our Christian life, and that's a matter that I think may be neglected somewhat in our day, and that's the matter of fasting. There are obviously, I believe, times and seasons where that we are perhaps given more to fasting than in other times of our lives. But I do believe that there ought to be a consistent and steady routine where that we do talk about fasting and look at and see what the Bible has to say about that. And I remember in 1997, I was at Because of the Times, and used to, before all of the digital age hit us, and before we were using Kindle and various other things like that, hard copy books were quite valuable. And so one of the highlights for me every year was whenever I was able to go to Because of the Times, I would go over to White Steeple. Probably spent way too much money on books, and some of those books, I'm sorry to admit to you that I probably still have not read. However, it was just always just a great time for me of just encouragement for revival, spiritual life, those sorts of things. And in 1997, there was a book that I just kind of randomly picked up, and this is a copy of it right here. It's a book called Fasting for Spiritual Breakthrough by Elmer Towns. And I think the book may even still be in print. It's easily available various places, Amazon and places like that. And I generally, whenever I go into used bookstores, if I see a copy of it, I generally will buy it. And I don't know how many copies over the years that I have given out to people for this book, because what this book does is it gives you a purpose for fasting. Prior to that time, I realized the importance of fasting, and I can remember especially when I was a kid growing up, there were a number of people that sort of had a reputation for fasting, and of course some of them took it to the nth degree, and it was not healthy for them. I am aware that there were some that greatly abused their bodies through the matter of fasting. That's not what I'm talking about, nor am I even talking about fasting for what some may consider to be health benefits. What I'm talking about is fasting for spiritual life, fasting for the Lord to work. It's not a part where we're using it to bargain with God, nor to try to twist His arm to get Him to do perhaps what we would want Him to do. I think it's even perhaps more rigorous than that, in the fact that what it does is it helps us to crucify the flesh. And whenever I was a kid, that would be in the 70s, mostly early 80s or so, it was not uncommon at all to hear evangelists come through the local church here in Dothan, and for them to make reference about fasting. And there were books that Arthur Wallace wrote a book about fasting. There was an author by the name of Hall who wrote a book called Atomic Power Through Prayer and Fasting, and that book was quite a hit, I think, back in the 70s or so. And I do believe the benefits of fasting can be very beneficial. When I got to Bible college, Brother Griffin, who taught me quite a number of classes, he was involved in a real regular discipline pattern of fasting. And then Brother Keating was also involved in that. In fact, I remember there was a time, this would have probably been in 91 or so, when Brother Griffin, or Brother Keating rather, was teaching through, it was either 1st or 2nd Corinthians. And during that period of time, was really seeking the will of God. He went on a 40-day fast. And remember, he didn't publicly, go about and tell everybody that, but there were a few of us that he was, I guess, maybe up close to. and he made some reference to the fact that he was on a 40-day fast. He lost weight during that time. And then there was another pastor, Ken Raggio at the time, up in Birmingham. And I remember I got close to Brother Raggio whenever he was pastoring up there. There were several times where that Brother Raggio would go on a 40-day fast. And sometimes it would just be a water fast. Other times he would use juice in that. But both of those men, Brother Keating and Brother Raggio, during that time while they were fasting for these extended periods, there was obvious weight loss, sometimes 20 to 30 pounds that they would lose while they were there. That had a motivating and inspiring effect on my life. But I think the challenge for me was that I would say, okay, I'm going to fast, but if there was no real purpose, and I mean specific purpose for fasting, a lot of times I would fall by the wayside. And of course, I was bivocational at the time, still working at the hospital. But this book that I bought, Fasting for Spiritual Breakthrough by Elmer Towns, is based on a scripture that comes from Isaiah 58. And he starts out in verse 5. Isaiah writes, "Is not such a fast that I have chosen, a day for a man to afflict his soul? Is it to bow down his head as a bulrush, and to spread sackcloth and ashes under him? Wilt thou call this a fast and an acceptable day to the Lord? Is not this the fast that I have chosen?" And that's the book that Arthur Wallace wrote, called The Chosen Fast. And then he goes into it. In verse 6, "There is a fast to loose bands of wickedness, to undo heavy burdens, to let the oppressed go free, and that ye break every yoke. Is it not to deal thy bread to the hungry, and that thou bring the poor that are cast out into thy house? When thou seest the naked, thou shalt cover him, and that thou hide not thy flesh from thine own, or hide not thyself from thine own flesh." And then here's the promise. You find it in verse 8. "Then shall thy light break forth as the morning, and thine health shall spring forth speedily, and thy righteousness shall go before thee. The glory of the Lord shall be thy reward." And then thou shalt call, verse 9, "and the Lord shall answer. Thou shalt cry, and he shall say, Here I am. If thou take away the midst of thee the yoke, and the putting forth of the finger, and speaking vanity." And if, you see these ifs here, there's conditional things that you find in the word. Verse 10, "And if thou draw out thy soul to the hungry, and satisfy the afflicted soul, then shall thy light rise in obscurity, and thy darkness be as the noonday." And then, of course, Jesus again mentioned in the Sermon on the Mount, where that he was talking about this matter of fasting. And he says in chapter 6, verse 16, "Moreover, when ye fast, be not as the hypocrites, of a sad countenance, for they disfigure their faces, that they may appear unto men to fast. Verily I say unto you, they have their reward. But thou, when thou fastest, anoint thine head, and wash thy face, that thou appear not unto men to fast, but unto thy Father which is in secret, and thy Father which seeth in secret shall reward thee openly." I believe there's something to that. I believe that whenever we allow ourselves to this call for fasting, that it crucifies our flesh. I can remember Brother Griffin telling us in class, kind of humorous, he'd get his shirt collar, jacket collar, and reach up behind, and he'd say like this, kind of shake it, he'd say, "Griffin, you're going to fast whether you feel like it or not. You're going to pray whether you feel like it or not." And I think there's probably some logic to that there's times where you have to just make a determination that I'm going to fast. And I'm gonna over the next few days or so, I want to give you maybe some practical tips that's going to help you to fast. Because if you have a purpose for your fasting, it can really turn on, I guess you would say, maybe not the ability to fast, but if you really make a commitment to fast, it can really be a change for your own spiritual life, and then you can look around you and you can start seeing the benefits of what it does even in the lives of others that you may be fasting for the Lord to do something in their lives as well. And so we'll spend a little bit of time here with this in the next few posts that I'm going to put up on YouTube. Let me leave you with this. Richard Foster had this to say: more than any other discipline, fasting reveals the things that control us. This is a wonderful benefit to the true disciple who longs to be transformed in the image of Jesus Christ. We cover up what is inside of us with food and other things. I believe there's something to that. I think we can medicate with food. Now, obviously, you watching this video, you can see that I certainly am not somebody that's malnourished, but I think the ability to push back the plate and just say, okay, this is going to be an extended time for me to fast. Kind of give you a plan, perhaps, that you want to maybe do. Our church, at the first week of every month, we have a prayer revival where we come together and we will pray on Monday, Tuesday, and Wednesday nights. And it's just a time of corporate prayer. I would say there are times where that we have just a tremendous move of God with those prayer revivals. There's other times that it's just not as perhaps as active maybe as we would like for it to be, but we're creating an atmosphere for prayer. And so what I try to do is during that prayer revival is to go on a 3-day fast through that. Now, you can choose whatever you choose to do. You can say, I'm not going to eat at all, or you can say, I'm going to fast 2 meals a day. I'll eat supper, and you leave that up to yourself. So fasting on a 3-day fast. Now, if you've never fasted, I would just say, don't just say I'm just going to jump in and go on a 3-day or 7-day fast. Because you're going to be very discouraged by that, especially if you're not in the routine of fasting. But that first week, generally set aside to fast for 3 days. There are other ways that I would just recommend. 1 day a week, and then a few times a year. We try to do communion here in our church about 3 times a year. And what I generally will do is on that Sunday night, that also coincides with our prayer revivals, is to go home on Sunday night, maybe eat after church, and then not eat again until the following Sunday night. And obviously you need to be drinking and stay well hydrated and all those sorts of things through that time frame. But I would again, I believe that fasting really does a lot for our souls and for our spirits. I've got a couple of other friends of mine that pastor, Brother Ben Weeks over in Valdosta, routinely in times in his life, he's been on a 21-day fast. Brother Jason Calhoun, Texarkana, Texas, 21-day fast as well. And I've never been on a 21-day fast. The longest I've ever fasted has been a week. And but yet we're called to do that. You see the prophets doing that. The Apostle Paul makes reference to that in his epistles. And so maybe over the next little bit, I can encourage you to give yourself to this matter of fasting to have some spiritual growth in your own life. So thanks for stopping in, and until the next time, the Lord bless you.